But you said
we start sitting up.
You said it should start from the point where the prosecution comes in, which is 100,000 naira for any offence for a year in jail. Well, I think it's 500,000 naira for a year. It depends on because they've got the
it depends scales.
The scales all leveled out. So at this point, if you have to put that into consideration, would you say that these money bags that you talk about, they have a lot of 100,000 naira to pay?
No.
It doesn't really
the 100,000 relates to the fine if you are convicted. I'm not talking about the amount involved in the inducement. The inducement could be 500 naira. So long as you can trace the money from the person who got the money and gave it to the next person. And I can tell you, Nigerian politicians have been careless in the past.
Can you trace that person?
You mean the person who induced?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it this way. You have, openly, the Osun election, for instance. The Osun election.
Has anyone been traced?
No. People were even caught. The important question to ask is...
No, the ones that were caught are just really minimal. The ones, can you trace? I mean, can you trace the source and then get
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Let me tell you how. Because these people are careless. They bring money, give it to an agent, a polling agent. He's given some amount of money, and the job is each person should get 5,000 or 1,000 naira. And you get this polling agent. The polling agent will definitely tell you where he got the money from. And after he tells you, that other person will tell you where he got the money from.
I love because there's a case, you hear all sorts of things in the field. When you go to monitor, there was a particular case where they were voting. So the police then accosted the person because some people reported that, look, that man has some money, he's trying to induce voters. So and then it turns out that he was actually giving somebody money.
Yeah.
So when they got both of them in the act, the person receiving said no. The first person giving initially said, no, I just came to pay him the money I was owing him. And the person said, yes, he's owing me, so he came
and
to
the story changed.
So how do
the
you
willing
catch?
participant.
Now, you see, this is Nigeria. There are no hard and fast rules to this. But you see, for as long as we continue to trivialize this matter, that, oh, no, I mean, you see, inducement, I think the EFCC's concern is this, that where does it start from? Where do these monies come from? A lot of politicians have stashed money outside the borders of Nigeria. They are keeping this money there, and now election time is coming, they are finding ways to bring in this money. Now, some of these monies come through our porous borders, some of these monies come through the banks. And their own attitude is, the first thing we do is we make sure that even when this money is coming, they cannot be disbursed.
But when people are thinking about how EFCC fits in, because they say, look, there are different stages to this phenomenon. Because some then think, look, the integrity of the ballot, which is a very key thing that they have to also take a look at. Because if you're focusing on what the commission has got to do, they have a limit. Because the INEC, they've got the responsibility by the Electoral Act to deploy security agencies on election day.
Yes.
That's a huge responsibility. So if they take advantage of that, that solves a lot of the problems.
INEC is incidentally, I mean, they say independent National Electoral Commission. We all know how independent INEC is. INEC is like a lame duck.
Are they not independent enough to deliver credible elections?
INEC
Is that what you're saying?
Independent but lame. Independent but lame in that.
No, a lot of people would disagree with you.
No, let me now explain why I said that. Now, you are independent. You can do your thing. INEC cannot tell the Inspector General of Police how to deploy, who to deploy, where to deploy. INEC cannot provide itself with security. No. INEC cannot safeguard the ballot.
Let me check this thing. No, when they deploy for elections, after the deployment,
charge of that.
When they then come for the elections, doesn't INEC come in and say, okay, well, here is what you then have to do?
Let me give you a practical example again of what happened on the island in one of these elections. Now, the INEC, the polling officer, the man from INEC to conduct the election, the man of we're on the same forum. So he gave this instance of what happened to him. He was the boss at a particular polling point. And he said he got there through Nigerians. We are going to make this change in this country. So he got there with the intention that today there will be no rigging. I'm not going to allow people campaigning or everything. We must follow the law strictly. So he gets there. And as soon as he got there, he saw party posters all over the place. which should not be by the Electoral Act. That on the election day, there should be no campaign, there should be nothing. The place should be bare. So he saw that. The police officer was already waiting. And then there was an elderly man who had been doing this since 1999, before this young man came into the picture. But the young man is the boss. So he came in and said, who put all these posters here? Well, everything must be removed. Some young men were hanging around. And then nobody answered him. He wanted to go and start tearing the posters. And the elderly man came to him. Come here, young man. I'm old enough to be your father. But if you want to do your job here today successfully, don't touch any posters. Don't try it. He called the policeman, who was also vastly experienced. If the policeman came and said, you can't tear parties' posters. That's the law enforcement officer. You can't. This is real life, Lagos Island. You can't tear party posters. It's wrong. And then the man said, why? He said, you see, look at those young men hanging around. They belong to different parties. They want to see which poster you will tear first. Because that will tell them which party you are supporting. Because the first one is the party you hate.
let me ask you this.
Let me finish, please. Okay. And then the young man thought about it. Oh, well educated. So he thought, this is sense. This is on the field experience. So he said, so what do we do? Because I can't allow this. He said, okay. The old man then called the young man. See, according to the electoral law, these posters should not be here. Why did you guys put it here? So please, each of you, whichever one is your party's on, can you please help us remove them so that they won't say. And they say, along your
wow,
thank your stars. We were waiting to see which one you will remove first. And then they went and removed the posters. Now the police officer he could not enforce the law. The INEC officers must not enforce the law. The parties themselves had to enforce the law. And that's where you and I come in.
Which brings me to the question, because we have to sign off in a moment.
Yes.
Isn't vote buying, or the prevalence of vote buying, a sign of the failure of voter education?
Oh, God. It's a sign of failure of everything in Nigeria. Poverty, hunger. It's a sign of everything bad about us as a people. It's not about voter education. The general education, what's the status? ASU has been on strike for how long? How can you talk about voter education when the whole system, the institutions are corrupt and corrupted? So vote buying and selling is a reflection of how low we have come. And I mean, we can only, like I would always tell them, at the moment, the only political party I can say I belong to is EFCC, simply because at least they claim to be fighting something that we know is killing us.
Is it right for the PDP to claim that trader money is vote buying?
Well, it's not about PDP now. I wouldn't want to hold forth for a political party. I wouldn't want any party to quote me. But I remember that sometime in January, the EFCC chairman attended a seminar or lecture organized by some banking group. All these officers that had issues, that they were being arrested, picked up for transporting money and all that. And I remember him specifically, that's the EFCC acting chairman. I remember him specifically talking about the kinds of monies that they are looking at. They are monitoring to see whether, he specifically mentioned all these stomach infrastructure kind of gifts, souvenirs. He mentioned interest-free monies. That, yes, interest-free monies that are just given out like that and all that.
What if it's in the budget? If it's been budgeted for?
Appropriated, yeah.
Well, he didn't talk about what if it's been budgeted. He just mentioned there were different classes of monies that he mentioned. He even talked about letters of credit. But those are the kinds of monies now that the people are using to disburse funds. Monies that are illicitly, they've been taken out of Nigeria, and then the banks here now open letters of credit so that they can bring in goods, buy goods with the letters of credit, which they are going to distribute to people. But the funds for getting those things were ordinarily illicit. Now, so to that extent, you see, the categorization does not really matter to me. coming from the mouth of the EFCC chairman, any Nigerian must be able to know by now that, okay, when this comes this way, so long as it's coming from a politician, you have to ask questions.
You know, speaking about that, those when you said that it's a symbol of how low we've come in the country, but we also not forget that there was this mayoral candidate in Chicago, Willie Wilson, who was handing out cash to potential voters. So isn't that, can then that qualify as though they themselves in that community too have come that low if we base it on the strength of what you said?
There is no, especially coming close to election time, there is no money that should be handed out. Because like I said,
in that society, you'll assume they may be a little more enlightened to know that perhaps should not be the case.
Even in that kind of society, you know, they respect the laws relating to campaign funding. Like in Nigeria, they say, oh, presidential candidates should not spend more than, I think, 70 million, governorship 30 million, and all that. You and I know that from what we are seeing on our streets, the governorship candidates are spending in billions. All the adverts, I mean, airtime, channels knows how much comes in through all that.
EFCC investigate them?
Oh, of course, all those disbursements ought to be investigated, even till after the elections. Whether they will come out with a report or not, it should be investigated. But INEC and EFCC must collaborate on that.
Yeah, but those are for incumbent governors, or isn't that? Or
no,
those who are in office.
Candidates. If you are a candidate, there's a limit to how much you should spend for campaign.
Has that law ever been enforced?
No. Have you ever had a governor or a candidate being tried for overspending
or using state funds for campaigns?
I mean, that is a big crime.
All right, that's how far we can go today. I appreciate your comment on John Olade, legal practitioner. That's the show today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Gimba Umar.
And I'm Ayo. Makine, have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. I'm Maufwe Ogun Yusuf.